So we're talking about parts 21 through 30, 20 through 30. I forgot which one I said.
It's that 21 to 30.
21 through 30 of I Am That, right? Okay. So, in this first part, I had a lot to highlight, but I did find in later parts of this particular section that we chose to read this week, I had less things I wanted to highlight. Like, it was interesting thoughts, but nothing that really was
Standing out, yeah.
standing out. Yes, exactly. And so, in this first part, I did like where he says, pursue any desire, it will give you trouble. And then I also highlighted, after all, the only fact you are sure of is that you are.
Yep. Everything else is
Yeah.
questionable.
The questioner asks or says states striving is painful. And our speaker says, you make it so by seeking results. Strive without seeking, struggle without greed.
Though I feel that is a contradiction in itself, sort of. Because the moment you're striving, I think you cannot strive without some kind of goal.
Yeah, so he hits on that a couple times, I feel like, in this section of the idea of like striving, but trying to do it without a goal or doing it with goals. Um, and I agree about this sense of contradiction that seems to be going on a little bit. I
I
think
Can
per
this?
suspect.
hmm?
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, could it be also a slight difference in the way that it's translated or the connotations of striving, where, like, striving, yeah, as Ben said, you should have some kind of goal. Like, we say striving as in working hard toward a particular end, but could this be a case maybe where it means more of just putting in effort and working hard in general, but maybe it doesn't have exactly the same, it's not as precise,
Mm-hmm.
possibly, and maybe it makes a little bit more sense that way.
I was also thinking that alongside translation issues might be just the simple decision of whoever assembled the text originally and how they assembled it. We noted before that the big gaps are probably indications of separate conversations that he had with different people. And sometimes I feel like they've been grouped together weirdly, and maybe that is the difference in translation. But sometimes the groupings, I think, cause more confusion. And then I feel like the thoughts are, yeah, they're kind of connected, but honestly, thinking about them back to back that way made it harder to perhaps grasp the deeper meaning. I don't know.
I don't think that striving. Can you scroll back up? I don't think the striving here is equated with looking for results because those are differentiated. Um, I suspect that striving here is meant as a sort of a doing without being.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's just a thing happening, but to look for results, that becomes an attachment. Not, in their usage of the word, but from what we know, that would be called being attached to it rather than just doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's the distinction being made, but it is unclear.
Yeah, I think so.
I watched a lot of Muji, who is uh, the next in the line of this succession of teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a certain um, how to put it. a form of implicit communication, such that the specificity of the words isn't as important as understanding the context. So I think them breaking it up into these small parts is a disservice if someone isn't already familiar with like how a satsang goes, or
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. Just because these little clips, like, to my uneducated mind, I would think, okay, well, this is interesting on its own, but like, what is this trying to tell me
Mm-hmm.
as a whole? This doesn't seem comprehensive at all, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I highlighted this a little bit in this next section only because I thought it was an interesting turn of phrase, not necessarily because I was like, oh, deep meaning or, well, deep revelation. It says, as long as you worry about sin and virtue, you will have no peace. Given some discussions I've had in the past, I feel like that one to me is a little more self explanatory than some of these little one off phrases that are coming out of the text.
Mhm.
Um, and then another little tidbit where I feel like we've set this mood already in some of the previous sections. I ask you only to stop imagining that you were born, have parents, are a body, will die, and so on. Just try, make a beginning. It is not as hard as you think. And that was in response to, what exactly do you mean when you ask me to stop being a person? So I think that to go back to what you were saying, Max, we have lost a much greater context with this little tiny segment existing the way it does.
Mhm.
It just is not giving us the full context of him saying, well, what was that conversation like when he said to stop being a person? I'd be fascinated to know.
Yeah, what he's pointing at is stop identifying with the Atman
Yeah.
and realize that you are the Brahman.
Mm-hmm.
But again, this is not at all comprehensive.
Yeah, this is not a comprehensive piece of text. I don't think
No.
it's a bad text overall
If you
as a
have
piece of
familiarity with it,
literature.
I think this is wonderful.
Yeah.
I think this is an excellent supplement, but I don't think this is a great, starting point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I didn't have much feelings about 22, which is also very short. I just highlighted the last little bit, which was free from all content.
That's even less context. That's
As
not
long
even a
as
sentence.
I know, as long as you are a seeker, better cling to the idea that you are pure consciousness, free from all content. So I thought that was a nice little sentence. Just, but it is not. It is lacking in context as a whole. But yeah, I highlighted just that little bit because it amused me to do so.
YouTubers won't like to hear that.
Yeah, you gotta be free from all content, yo. 23. I didn't. It was okay. He talks. I think the overarching theme of a couple of these sections is to eliminate the idea that you are separate from other things or the universe or the world.
Yep.
And that's honestly all you really need to know. I have no deeper feelings about that section. Beyond that, you guys are welcome to stop me if you feel more strongly. Then he says some stuff about desire and fulfillment, and you must be very careful as to what you desire. Talks about a non-doer, the nani, janani. Do you pronounce the J in that word?
Yeah, I think the I've seen it pronounced like a G, like Yani or something like that.
Yani.
It's
Yana.
really it's kind of strange actually.
I don't remember how to pronounce that.
Yeah. Well, when it joins the universal mind, all his goodness and wisdom become the heritage of humanity. Whatever that word is. Oh, I highlighted this sentence and I actually thought it was really interesting. A man who claims to know what is good for others is dangerous. And I was like, oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
That was like a fascinating sentence to read. I was like, yeah, I resonated with that. Had some thoughts on it.
It's funny though because earlier in this text he says what's good for others.
Yeah. Says he loves contradictions. That's his favorite. Desire is a state of the mind, perceived and named by the mind. Without the mind perceiving and naming, where is desire?
Yeah. Good question, actually.
If you're dead, how can you eat?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of valid thought processes going on in these sections, and I don't mean to like dismiss them, but I think that missing some of the context in which these questions were asked is a bummer. What is happiness worth when you have to strive and labor for it? True happiness is spontaneous and effortless.
If a depressed person were to read that sentence,
Mm-hmm.
they would say, must be nice. And
Oh,
then
that's
probably
nice.
go away. Yeah. That's right.
All right. Then we have part 26. I highlighted this because it was fascinating. So the questioner is like, the desire to live is a tremendous thing. And then he's like, still the greater is the freedom from the urge to live. I was like, oh man, we got dark here for a minute. And I realized I'm reading it real different than I think it was intended. But I still was real amused. I was like, oh man.
And then the distinction between the urge to live and the urge to not live, like an absence of the urge to live is not the same as not wanting to live or wanting to die.
Right. It's not an active desire to cease the living. It's different.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the word urge has some urgency to it. Ha 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 ha. So there's like a panic or a freneticness to it, an insistence, a desperation, right? So to be free from that, rather than to be free from life itself, I think would allow one to live with greater happiness and joy, which I think is what they're getting at. But again, fuck, man.
Love is the meaning and purpose of duality. Any thoughts on that sentence?
Interesting. That makes sense.
That was approximately my full thought process when I highlighted it.
I hadn't considered it that way, but I like that sort of poetic interpretation. It works.
I'm a big sucker for poetry. If you guys haven't figured that out based on what I tend to highlight. So, yeah. Let's see. Just living one's life liberates. Why are not all liberated? The questioner asks. All are being liberated. It is not what you live, but how you live that matters. The idea of enlightenment is of utmost importance. Just to know that there is such possibility changes one's entire outlook. It acts like a burning match in a heap of sawdust. All the great teachers did nothing else. There you go. I highlighted that. Look, 27. I'm sorry. If you guys want me to spend more time on a section, you can let me know.
No, you're doing good.
We get into a couple more words here that I'm not 100% on the pronunciation. We got chit, kit, in movement
chit.
is ananda.
Mhm.
Kit, motionless, is being. So if you like to learn your vocabulary words, here they are.
There's this string of 3 words that is often repeated in this Advaita context, which is Sat Chit Ananda, which I have seen translated as existence, consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
bliss. So Ananda is bliss. Chit is can be consciousness, but I have also seen it translated as mind, I think. And then Sat is truth and the absolute and all that kind of jazz. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool beans. Thank you. Um, so then with this next bit, he talks more. We get back into that. His continued dialogue that seems to come back again and again is that dualistic discussion of ceasing to like separate yourself from things and reality. So I highlighted beyond the mind, there is no such thing as experience. Experience is a dual state. You cannot talk of reality as an experience. Once this is understood, you will no longer look for being and become as separate and opposite. I tell you, I read that a couple times, and I still think there's something wrong with the translation. Like I can't.
Certainly
Yeah.
sentence or a couple sentences. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's certainly some sentences. I kind of get, I think, what was trying to be said at the same time that I'm like, it was said real weird.
So it's talking about um, experience as a becoming and the one who experiences as being,
Mm-hmm.
but they are the same because experiencing can only happen through an experiencer, just as you can only have left if you also have right.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't look for being and becoming as separate and opposite. You see them as the same thing. Ah, yeah, further on, in reality, they are one and inseparable, like roots and branches of the same tree.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I get the connection, right? Because this is something we see again and again in these types of texts. It's not um indecipherable fully. I just something beats the rhythm is kind of weird here. But that's just me maybe complaining about writing more than the thought process.
also, keep in mind all of this was spoken,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. So there's definitely differences in how people order things.
Oh, I liked this one. Anxiety and hope are born of imagination. He says in the context of what gives him courage and such. And then I wonder about the full conversation. I can guess at what might have led to this. The questioner goes, I began at birth. And then they go back and forth. And I like what the questioner says here of I began just now. All else is memory. And he's like, yep, good job. Look, it's section 28. Who could have guessed
Yeah,
this was
yeah.
going to come next? More about desires, imperfections, and happiness. What is happiness? Harmony between the inner and outer is happiness. On the other hand, self-identification with the outer causes is suffering. Which is fascinating that he defines inner and outer separately, given his very consistent adamancy that there is no separation between these things.
Well, you have to speak to people in the language they understand. If you try to speak with non-duality, you won't get much said.
Mm-hmm.
That is true.
Why is there so much suffering in love? All suffering is born
I
of
hope
desire.
they talked like that.
Like Toad from Mario.
God, is that what Toad sounds like? No.
No, Toad sounds like, why is there so much suffering in love?
That's correct. That's exactly what Toad sounds like.
That's Toad's voice. All suffering is born of desire.
Is this guy Batman now? Oh, man.
I am the darkness.
Oh, no. I have derailed Des. She just moves on.
Sorry. Why do people let me do this? Let me lead this discussion at all?
Because you're great.
Living is life's only purpose. Section 29. Who fails? The person, Vyakti, or the self, Vyakta? Max, answer the question.
That doesn't even make sense.
That's what he says. The question is wrongly put. Good job. Gold star. Good job, Max.
Yeah.
All right. So, the self does not identify itself as success or failure. The very idea of becoming this or that is unthinkable, he says. The self understands that success and failure are relative and related, that they are the very warp and weft of life. Ah, look at that weaving reference. If you guys don't know what warp and weft are, you probably do. You're learned people.
Nope.
Okay. When you're weaving, the warp and weft are the threads that go side to side and up and down.
Cool.
Yeah. So the warp is on the loom. It's kind of the unmoving bits that are tied to the loom, and then the weft gets woven in. So there you go. I know this because I teach weaving to my students. What am I to learn? Once you know with absolute certainty. I can't do it now. Once you know with absolute certainty that nothing can trouble you but your own imagination, you come to disregard your desires and fears, concepts and ideas, and live by truth it alone. I think where he keeps coming back to imagination is really interesting in the text as a theme, though, because I do see it in multiple parts, and that, fear and anxiety being born of imagination, as I highlighted earlier. He comes back to it here with this idea that, it's all coming from a place of non-reality, or in that you're kind of making up the story as you go along, I guess. I find that really interesting.
It's like telling yourself a ghost story and getting frightened.
Yes. Oh, that's a really good way of putting it, Max. I like that. Yes. Like telling yourself a ghost story. Getting frightened. But yeah, I think he kind of hits on that a few times. In weird little sideways ways. The seed of spiritual life grows in silence and in darkness until it is appointed hour. I was born in the darkness. You didn't say that I was born in the darkness part. I'm sorry, guys. I lied.
I I need to see a flash animation of Batman and Bane having this conversation between each other.
I would feel sorry for anyone watching this video and then like random flash animations of my random voices came up. Just various character voices I put together.
In the meantime, they're doing interpretive dances.
One may get old, but why should one lose all alertness and discrimination?
I cringed. You made me cringe.
Good. That means my powers are working. I've made a connection with your soul from across a distance. You didn't like the way it felt, but we did it.
Rubbing my fur the wrong way.
I think it's a superpower of teaching. Like, only the true teachers can have this power.
Yeah. That's how you know I'm legit. I can make you incredibly uncomfortable with just the sound of my voice.
You can make me, a grown man, miles away, cringe.
Yes. Finally.
And not leave.
Right.
Yeah.
You're cringing, but you're still here.
Yeah, you're still in the chat.
From class yet.
That's because Max likes me, thinks I'm neat.
It's true.
I trick people into thinking I'm neat so that they have to listen to me talk longer.
I trick people.
Yeah.
I'll put that on your tombstone.
Thank you. Even if it's not like carved in it, I need you to go like graffiti my tombstone with it.
Right. Just
Thank you.
trick people. No context.
All right. I was told that a realized man will never do anything unseemly. He will always behave in an exemplary way. Yo, who sets that example? Why should a liberated man necessarily follow conventions? The moment he becomes predictable, he cannot be free. There you go. Max, I can hear your distaste for my voice in your silence. Can you look from the outside while I look from within? I do not see a sufferer. I am the sufferer. I think that this is a nice little sentence, and I mostly because when I read it, I immediately was thinking about the practice of loving kindness, the Tonglen practice that Pema brings up in a couple of her writings, and I believe in Thich Nhat Hanh's writings. Anyway, mostly the loving kindness practice of extending beyond yourself, and so that reminded me of that. Where you're like, I don't see someone suffering, I'm also the sufferer. And so, I don't know. It's good.
I like the next little, will this stupidity ever come to an end?
Yes, I do like the idea that people are talking to him and be like, bro, stop talking nonsense. But it's probably just like the stupidity of life, of reality. Yes, suffering. I get it. But also, this is also the lack of context, right? Like, I started that sentence with no idea. He could have just meant he thinks this guy is stupid. He does not.
That's why you read the next sentence.
No, Max!
Damn.
This is book club. What do you think I do here? Read?
Readings for nerds.
Readings for nerds. Don't do that. The cadence of this next sentence is interesting. In man, of course, any moment. In humanity, as we know it, after very many years. In creation, never. For creation itself is rooted in ignorance. Matter itself is ignorance. Not to know, and not to know that one does not know, is the cause of endless suffering. This reminds me of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
I don't remember what that means.
It's the opposite of the imposter syndrome. It's like,
oh.
You
feeling
don't...
like you know what's up,
yeah.
but you don't?
Because you know so little, you don't realize how much you don't know.
You don't even know that you don't know.
You don't know that you don't know. And then you get to the point of knowing so much, you realize how much you don't know. So then you are, yeah.
Then you go party.
Woo!
Yeah.
Gets a little poetic here again in a couple places. The dreams are not equal, but the dreamer is one. I am the insect. I am the poet. It's a good little section. Why did I highlight that again? The very idea of going beyond the dream is illusory. Why go anywhere? Just realize that you are dreaming a dream you call the world and stop looking for ways out. The dream is not your problem. Your problem is that you like one part of your dream and not another. Love all or none of it and stop complaining. When you have seen the dream as a dream, you have done all that needs to be done. I like that part. And part 30 congratulates us on our new enlightenment. You are free now.
It's not new enlightenment, Des. We've always had it. We just haven't activated it by calling in and inserting our special code.
That's right.
Yeah, you have to activate it.
Gotta activate it like a sleeper agent. We are complex beings at war within and without. We contradict ourselves all the time, undoing today the work of yesterday. No wonder we are stuck. A little of integrity would make a lot of difference. I feel this so hard in my journey of like, I have these days where I feel like, oh man, look how much progress I've made. I'm so close to enlightenment. I'm so ready. And then just the next day I drink 10 cups of coffee and forget all that. The questioner says people die willingly quite often. And he's like, nah, bruh. That's only if the alternative is worse than death. Once the illusion that the body mind as oneself is abandoned, death loses its terror. It becomes a part of living. And then that's very much just like, death is the next great journey kind of mindset. So anyway, that was Des's interpretation of the text. I apologize for my chaotic nature regarding review of the text.
Regarding all things.
Does anyone have any further thoughts they'd like to share on parts 20 through 30, 21 through 30?
Nope.
Yeah.
Go team. We did it.
We did it.
Yay.